Emily Morrison pressed her small hand against the viewport of the Centaurian vessel Starweaver, watching as Earth diminished into a burning marble behind them. The observation deck's crushing gravity made even this simple gesture exhausting, but she refused to step away. She was 12 years old, and this would be her last glimpse of home. "Move aside, little one," a crystalline voice chimed from above. A Centaurian officer loomed over her, their faceted body refracting the starlight into rainbow patterns across the deck. "This U-port isn't for refugee entertainment." Emily's legs trembled as she forced herself to stand straighter in the heavy artificial gravity. The ship maintained Centaurian standard gravity throughout all decks, nearly triple Earth normal. Most adult humans could barely walk under the pressure. But Emily had noticed something strange over the past week. It was getting easier, little by little. "I'm recording," she said, holding up her old data tablet. "For history. Someone needs to remember." The Centaurians' crystalline features shifted in what Emily had learned was their equivalent of a condescending smile. "Remember, your species barely managed to reach your own moon. What could you possibly teach about recording history?" Before Emily could respond, a flash of light from the viewport drew their attention. The Void Dominion's warships had started their final bombardment. Emily's tablet captured it all. The geometric patterns of alien weapons fire, the way the atmosphere itself seemed to catch fire in swirling, unnatural colors. She forced herself to watch, even as tears blurred her vision. "Fascinating," the Centaurian officer mused. "Your ocular lubricant contains a high saline content. Is this a common stress response?" Emily wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "They're called tears. And yes, humans cry when we're sad. Or angry. Right now, on both." The observation deck filled with more refugees, both human and alien. The Void Dominion had struck dozens of worlds in this sector. Emily noticed how the other species clustered together, leaving the humans isolated. Their whispered conversations, in languages her translator struggled to parse, made their opinions clear. Humans were the lowest of the low, barely space-capable when the attack came. A sharp pain in her legs made Emily realize she'd been standing too long in the heavy gravity. She should have been on the refugee deck, where medical officers had advised all humans to remain lying down to prevent skeletal stress. Instead, she forced herself to stay upright, shifting her weight in tiny increments. "You'll damage yourself," another refugee, a bioluminescent being, warned her kindly. "Your species isn't built for this gravity." "Then we'll adapt," Emily replied through gritted teeth. "It's what humans do." The words had barely left her mouth when Earth's moon exploded. The Void Dominion ships had struck its core with some impossible weapon, turning Luna into a ring of debris that scattered across Earth's burning atmosphere like a funeral veil. The sight drew gasps even from the alien refugees, all except the Centaurians, who simply recorded the event with clinical detachment. Emily's tablet slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering to the deck. When she bent to retrieve it, something strange happened. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, the crushing gravity felt normal. Her muscles had bunched and moved without the screaming protest she'd felt all week. The sensation vanished quickly, but it left her with a strange hope. She looked around the observation deck at her fellow human refugees. Most sat slumped against walls, some being tended to by medical officers for gravity sickness. But a few stood like her, tears on their faces, watching their world burn. And in their eyes, she saw not just grief, but determination. The Centaurian officer had moved away, discussing evacuation logistics with their peers. Emily heard fragments about minimal expectations for human survival rates and likely permanent physical deterioration in the high-gravity environment. They spoke as if humanity's story was already over, as if Earth's destruction was just another data point in their vast histories. Emily clutched her tablet closer and made a silent promise to herself. She would not just survive in this crushing gravity, she would thrive in it. Earth was gone, but humanity's story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And someday, somehow, she would make these aliens understand exactly what they had saved when they agreed to evacuate the primitive humans. Behind her, Earth's burning atmosphere finally collapsed, and darkness claimed humanity's cradle. 3 years of secret training had changed Emily Morrison in ways that defied the Centaurians' predictions. While other humans remained confined to the refugee deck's reduced gravity, she had slowly conquered the crushing pressure of the ship's standard gravity. Each night, in the privacy of her tiny quarters, she pushed her limits until her muscles burned and her bones ached. By 15, she could run. The sound of shattering crystal interrupted her morning routine. Emily froze mid-push-up, listening to the echoes bouncing through the ship's corridors. Then came the screams, human screams. She was moving before her mind fully processed the decision, her body flowing through the heavy gravity with practiced ease. She found them in the garden deck, a massive chamber where the Centaurians grew their crystalline flora. A group of young Centaurians, barely into their adolescent phase, had cornered Robert and Maria Santos, an elderly couple who'd survived Earth's fall. The aliens were using their natural crystal manipulation abilities to create a shifting maze around the humans, watching them stumble and gasp in the heavy gravity. "Look how they shuffle," one Centaurian youth laughed, his crystalline body pulsing with colored light, like damaged maintenance drones. "Please," Maria gasped, helping her husband stay upright. "Robert's heart can't take this gravity." The Centaurian youths responded by growing the crystal walls higher, their faceted faces refracting light in patterns that Emily recognized as amusement. They were treating it like a game, testing how long the primitive humans could last in their environment. Something snapped inside Emily. Not rage. Rage was hot and fast. This was cold, calculated, and had been building for 3 years. She took 3 quick steps and launched herself over the nearest crystal barrier, a jump that should have been impossible in triple gravity. The Centaurian youths froze, their crystalline bodies chiming in surprise as she landed among them. Emily moved like water through their defenses, every motion honed by countless hours of secret training. When the first young alien tried to grab her, she used his own momentum and the high gravity to flip him into a crystal formation. "Impossible," another youth hissed, extending crystal spikes from his arms, a defensive reflex. "Your muscle density." Emily ducked under his guard and swept his legs, understanding now why the heavy gravity had become her ally. Every movement she made carried triple the normal force. When she struck, the impact was magnified by the environment they thought would weaken her. The fight lasted less than a minute. 4 Centaurian youths lay scattered around her, their crystalline bodies ringing with shock rather than pain. Emily stood in their midst, breathing steadily despite the gravity, and felt their worldview shatter like the garden's broken crystal formations. "The ship's gravity generators," one youth stammered. "They must be malfunctioning." "No malfunction," Emily replied, helping Maria and Robert toward the deck's exit. "Just evolution." A slow, rhythmic chiming drew everyone's attention. An older Centaurian stood in the garden's entrance, his scared crystalline form marking him as a warrior. Commander Vixtal, Emily recalled, a veteran of numerous campaigns who now served as a security advisor on the refugee ship. The commander studied the scene with multifaceted eyes. The scattered Centaurian youths, the broken crystal formations, and the human girl who moved through crushing gravity as if it were nothing. "Interesting," he chimed, his translator giving the word layers of meaning. "You've been training." Emily straightened, expecting punishment. Someone had to. "Your species' cellular structure," Vixtal continued, circling her with professional curiosity. "It's adapting, reinforcing. Even your bone density has increased." He gestured at the fallen youths. "You didn't just fight them. You used our own gravity against them." "We adapt," Emily said simply. "It's what humans do." The commander's crystalline surface shifted in complex patterns. "Perhaps," he said finally, "it's time someone taught you to do more than simply adapt." He extended a crystalline hand, light playing across its faceted surface. "Come with me, Emily Morrison. Let me show you what a human warrior can become." Behind him, the Centaurian youths picked themselves up, their previous disdain replaced with something new, respect tinged with fear. They had witnessed something their species had thought impossible, a human becoming stronger in the very environment meant to keep them weak. Emily looked at the commander's offered hand, then at the elderly couple she protected. Maria nodded slightly, understanding in her eyes. This was more than just one girl's chance at training. This was humanity's opportunity to prove they weren't just survivors. Emily took the commander's hand, and with that gesture, the legend of the human crystal began. Again, Commander Vixtel's voice chimed through the training chamber. His crystalline form caught the starlight streaming through the viewport, casting prismatic patterns across the deck. Emily pushed herself up from the floor, ignoring the burning in her muscles. 3 months into her training, and she still hadn't managed to complete the first form of crystal flow. The ceremonial combat art had shattered the bodies of every non-Centaurian who'd attempted to learn it. "Your body knows the movement," Vixtel observed, circling her. "But your mind still fights against possibility. You think like a human." "I am human," Emily countered, settling into the starting stance. Her body, now adapted to the crushing gravity, moved with deliberate precision. The commander's crystalline surface rippled with what she learned to recognize as amusement. "Are you? Look at your cellular structure now, compared to 3 months ago. Your bones have density readings that shouldn't be possible for your species. Your muscle fibers have completely reorganized." Emily began the form again, her movements flowing like water through the heavy gravity. The art of crystal flow required practitioners to move against natural forces, creating power from resistance itself. For Centaurians, their crystalline bodies naturally channeled and redirected force. For a human, it should have been impossible. "Better," Vixtel chimed as she completed the sequence, "but still too rigid. You're trying to match our movements exactly. Find your own way through the form." Emily wiped sweat from her forehead, a human response that still fascinated her mentor. "The ancient texts say the forms must be perfect." "The ancient texts," Vixtel's voice resonated with gentle mockery, "never conceived of a human practitioner. Your species has something we don't: infinite adaptability." He gestured, and a holographic display materialized, showing microscopic images of Emily's cellular structure. "Look here. Your body doesn't just endure change, it craves it. Each stress creates adaptation. Each failure makes you stronger. My people thought this was a weakness, that you would crumble under pressure. Instead, you transform it into evolution." Emily studied the images, seeing how her muscle fibers had indeed changed, becoming denser, more efficient. Even her bones showed unusual growth patterns, reinforcing themselves against the constant strain of high gravity. "Watch," Vixtel commanded. His crystalline form shifted, beginning the second form of crystal flow. His movements were precise, geometric, each stance flowing into the next like liquid crystal. "Now, don't copy. Adapt." Emily began the form, but this time, she let her body move naturally. Where Vixtel's movements were angular and sharp, hers became fluid and continuous. The crushing gravity became her ally, lending weight and power to each transition. She felt something click into place, not just in her muscles, but in her understanding. "Yes," Vixtel's voice rang with triumph. "You see, crystal flow isn't about mimicking our forms. It's about understanding the principles behind them. Force, resistance, adaptation." Emily completed the form with a movement that was distinctly her own, a spinning kick that used the high gravity to generate devastating force. The training chamber's sensors registered the power reading with an alarmed chime. "Remarkable." Vixtel studied her with all 4 of his faceted eyes. "You've created something new, the hybrid style that honors the principles while adapting to your unique physiology." Emily caught her breath, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles pushed to their limits. Will the other Centaurians accept it? This variation. They'll have to. Vic's tall surface rippled with determination. Because you're going to show them something they've never seen before. Crystal flow evolved beyond its origins. He paused, his next words carrying deep meaning. You know what this means for your future. Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. I'm going to apply for the Defense Force Academy. The first human ever to do so. Vic Stull confirmed. They'll oppose you. They'll say it's impossible, that the training will kill you. His crystalline form shifted into a combat stance. So let's make sure you prove them wrong. Again. Emily smiled and settled into her adapted stance. Where a Centaurian stood rooted like a crystal spire, she remained fluid, ready to flow. As she began the third form, her movements created their own beauty. Not the geometric perfection of crystal flow, but something new, something human. The stars watched through the viewport as human adaptability and Centaurian tradition merged into something the galaxy had never seen before. Each movement wrote a new chapter in both species' histories, proving that evolution wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation. The Centaurian Defense Force Academy's crystalline spires pierced the purple sky of New Genesis, their faceted surfaces reflecting the light of 3 suns. Emily Morrison stood at the entrance, her acceptance notice displaying on her worn data tablet. Behind her, Commander Vic Stull's presence silenced the whispers of gathering cadets. Last chance to withdraw. The Academy's chief instructor, Master Kixlar, chimed. His crystalline form towered over Emily, refracting sunlight in patterns that conveyed both doubt and curiosity. The entrance trials have a 90% casualty rate among Centaurians. For a human, Emily handed him her tablet. Then I'll be the first to survive them. The first trial began in the gravity chamber, a massive arena where gravitational forces could shift instantly from 0 to 10 times standard. The other candidates, all Centaurians, took positions around the chamber's edge. Their crystalline bodies hummed with anticipation, expecting to witness the human's swift elimination. The chamber's gravity disappeared. Several Centaurian candidates, despite their natural affinity for crystal formations, flailed in the zero-G environment. Emily, however, moved with practiced grace. Years of secret training in varying gravity fields had prepared her for this moment. First challenge, Master Kixlar announced. Crystal retrieval in variable gravity. Crystalline spheres materialized throughout the chamber. As the candidates pushed off the walls to reach them, the gravity shifted. Some zones became crushing wells of force, while others remained in 0G. Emily watched 2 Centaurian candidates collide, their crystalline forms chiming in distress as they tumbled into a high-gravity zone. She moved differently. Where the Centaurians fought against the gravity shifts, Emily used them. A push off the wall sent her through a 0G sector. Then she let a high-gravity zone accelerate her descent, rolling to disperse the force. Her human vestibular system, evolved for complex 3-dimensional movement, gave her an edge in spatial awareness. Impossible, a Centaurian candidate muttered as Emily collected her 3rd crystal. She's reading the gravity fluctuations before they happen. No, Emily replied, spinning past him to grab another crystal. I'm reading your movements. The gravity shifts follow patterns, like a dance. Years of crystal flow training had taught her to see the rhythms in seemingly chaotic forces. The trial ended with Emily holding 5 crystals, a perfect score. The chamber powered down, returning to standard gravity. Master Kixlar's faceted eyes studied her with new intensity. The physical trial was merely a warm-up, he chimed. Now we test your combat capabilities. The next challenge took place in the crystal arena. Emily faced off against 3 Centaurian candidates simultaneously. Their crystalline bodies shifted and grew razor-sharp edges, a natural defense mechanism of their species. Begin, Master Kixlar commanded. The first Centaurian charged, extending crystal spikes from his arms. Emily flowed around his attack like water, using his momentum to throw him into the second candidate. The third tried to trap her in a crystal formation, but she had trained for this. Her adapted muscles carried her through gaps that shouldn't have been possible for a human frame. "She's using modified crystal flow," someone gasped. "That's forbidden." "No," Commander Vixtel's voice rang out. "She's evolving it." Emily completed her combination with a spinning kick that sent the last candidate sprawling. The entire match had lasted less than 30 seconds. The arena fell silent. Master Kixlar stepped forward, his crystalline surface shifting through complex patterns of light. In 300 years of Academy history, no candidate has ever completed both trials on their first attempt. He paused, his next words carrying through the stunned silence. "Welcome to the Academy, Cadet Morrison." As Emily bowed in acceptance, she caught whispers among the other candidates. They called her the Human Crystal, no longer a mockery, but a name tinged with respect and fear. She had not just survived their trials, she had excelled in ways they never imagined possible. Commander Vixtel approached her as the other candidates filed out. "They'll make your training twice as difficult now. The old guard won't accept change easily." Emily smiled, her muscles pleasantly sore from the trials. "Good. That means I'll adapt twice as fast." The three sons of New Genesis cast her shadow across the crystal floor, a human silhouette that would soon become legend in these hallowed halls. The colony of New Aurora hung like a crystalline jewel in space, its transparent domes refracting starlight across the asteroid's dark surface. Junior Officer Emily Morrison stood at her observation post, monitoring the defense grid when the first anomalies appeared. Multiple fold space ruptures detected. The sensor officer announced, his crystalline form pulsing with alarm patterns. Energy signatures match Void Dominion configurations. Emily's enhanced muscles tensed as dark ships emerged from the tiers in space. Their organic metallic hulls absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making them appear as moving holes in the starfield. The same ships that had destroyed Earth had found this sanctuary. All officers to battle stations. Command's orders echoed through the crystal corridors. Evacuate civilians to the emergency shelters. Emily sprinted toward her assigned sector, the crushing gravity no longer an impediment after years of adaptation. She reached the colony's outer education dome, just as the first impacts struck. Crystal reinforcements splintered, emergency force fields flickered, and she found herself cut off from the main complex with 24 children, both human and Centaurian. Officer Morrison, a young Centaurian girl, chimed in fear. "The safety protocols aren't responding." Emily's mind raced. The Void Dominion's attack had severed their section's connections to the main computer network. Standard procedure would be to wait for rescue, but she could see enemy boarding pods approaching through the dome's transparent sections. "Everyone gather round," she commanded, dropping to one knee to meet the children's eyes. "We're going to play a game called Ghost in the Crystal." As she spoke, her hands moved quickly, removing panels from the wall to expose maintenance systems. Years of studying both human and Centaurian engineering gave her unique insights into the colony's infrastructure. "The maintenance tunnels," she explained, helping the first children into the narrow passages. "They're manually operated, independent of the main systems. We can use them to move undetected." A Void Dominion breaching pod struck the dome nearby, its dark mass starting to burn through the crystal. Emily guided the last child into the tunnel, then grabbed a maintenance kit. Inside were basic tools and cleaning supplies. Nothing meant for combat, but that had never stopped humans before. "Watch this," she told the frightened children as she mixed cleaning compounds. "When I was your age, we learned basic chemistry on Earth. Some things, when combined properly, become very exciting." The first Void Dominion soldiers breached the dome just as Emily finished her improvised explosives. Their biomechanical forms moved with artificial precision, scanning for life signs. They found none. She had already moved the children through the maintenance system, leaving only surprises behind. The next hour became a deadly game of hide and seek through New Aurora's crystalline maze. Emily used everything at her disposal. Maintenance drones reprogrammed into decoys, Cleaning chemicals turned into smoke screens, and the children's knowledge of hidden passages even the colony's builders had forgotten. "Your species continues to perplex us," a Void Dominion commander's voice echoed through captured communication channels. "Our tactical algorithms cannot predict your movements." Emily smiled as she set another trap. "That's because you stole our military databases, but forgot one crucial thing. Humans write those procedures expecting them to be broken." She led her group through the colony's industrial section, teaching the older children to create distractions using machinery sounds. The Centaurian children, with their natural crystal manipulation abilities, helped seal passages behind them. Human and alien youth working together, turning their differences into strengths. When the colony's defense forces finally broke through to their section, they found an extraordinary scene. 24 children were safe in a makeshift bunker, surrounded by disabled enemy units. Emily stood guard at the entrance, a length of crystal pipe adapted into a staff, her uniform covered in mechanical fluid from close encounters. Officer Morrison, the rescue team's leader, chimed in disbelief. "How did you?" "Simple," Emily replied, helping a young human girl to her feet. "I stopped thinking like a soldier and started thinking like a survivor. It's an old human trick." She gestured to the children. "And I had excellent help. These kids know their home better than any battle I ever could." The incident became required viewing at the academy, but not for the reasons anyone expected. It wasn't just a lesson in combat tactics. It was proof that survival sometimes meant unlearning everything you thought you knew about warfare. Emily's after-action report included one detail that particularly fascinated the Centaurian High Command. She had taught the children how to make explosives from cleaning supplies, while telling them old Earth stories to keep them calm. In that moment of crisis, she had been both warrior and teacher, survivor and protector. Everything humanity had learned to be through their long history of overcoming impossible odds. Emily stood before the tactical display in the Centaurian Defense Force's Strategic Command Center, her eyes fixed on the holographic representation of recent Void Dominion attacks. The crystalline walls reflected the blue glow of battle data, casting strange shadows across the faces of assembled officers. "Something about these patterns," she muttered, her fingers tracing the enemy's movement lines. "I've seen this before." Commander Vixtel stood beside her, his scared crystalline form reflecting the tactical displays. "You've been studying these reports for 3 days straight. Even in our gravity, you should rest." But Emily couldn't rest. The answer was there, tickling the edges of her consciousness. She pulled up the historical record of Earth's fall, comparing it to recent attacks. Then she accessed her personal database, the one containing her father's old military history books, saved on her tablet before Earth's destruction. "Computer," she commanded, "overlay the movement patterns from the Battle of New Aurora with historical Earth military campaigns." Her fingers flew across the control surface. "Focus on pincer movements and flanking maneuvers." The holographic display shifted, centuries of human warfare dancing before their eyes. Suddenly, Emily's breath caught in her throat. "There," she pointed to a particular sequence. "The Void Dominion's attack on New Aurora's southern hemisphere. Compare it to the Battle of Cannae, Earth year 216 BCE. The computer overlaid the patterns. They matched perfectly. And here," she continued, her voice growing more excited, "they're space-fold ambush tactics, straight from Admiral Nelson's naval strategies. They're using human military history against us." The Centaurian officers gathered closer, their crystalline bodies chiming in confusion and interest. "Explain," General Krelax demanded, his faceted eyes studying the patterns. Emily pulled up more comparisons. The Void Dominion didn't just destroy Earth. They stole our military databases, our tactical histories. They're using adapted versions of human strategies, but she smiled grimly. "They're using them wrong." "Wrong?" Commander Vixtal queried. "The patterns match exactly." "That's precisely the problem," Emily explained, bringing up multiple battle displays. Human military tactics evolved through thousands of years of warfare. Each strategy was developed to counter the previous ones. It's not enough to copy the moves. You need to understand the context, the counter-strategies, the psychology behind them. She highlighted a recent Void Dominion assault pattern. Look here, they're using a perfect textbook example of a hammer and anvil maneuver. But in human warfare, we develop dozens of counters to this exact strategy. The Void Dominion is using our tactics without understanding their weaknesses. The command center hummed with the crystalline resonance of excited Centaurians. General Krelax moved closer to the display, his surface reflecting complex patterns of realization. This is why their tactical algorithms couldn't predict your movements during the New Aurora incident, he chimed. You weren't following any standard protocol. Emily nodded. Humans learn military strategy not just to follow it, but to know when to break it. We understand that every perfect plan has a perfect counter. The Void Dominion copied our playbook but missed the most important lesson. Adaptation is more valuable than perfection. She brought up a new tactical display, one showing potential counter strategies. They're using human military history like a museum piece, but warfare isn't about preserving the past. It's about evolving beyond it. Commander Vixtel's surface rippled with what Emily had learned to recognize as pride. Just as you did with Crystal Flow. You didn't just copy our forms, you evolved them into something new. Exactly. Emily's fingers danced across the controls, highlighting potential weaknesses in the enemy's patterns. The Void Dominion thinks they've mastered human warfare, but they've only scratched the surface. They have our knowledge without our understanding, our strategies without our creativity. General Krelax studied the display for a long moment before turning to Emily. Officer Morrison, I'm promoting you to strategic advisor. Your understanding of human military evolution could be the key to countering their attacks. Emily looked at the battle displays, seeing not just the patterns of warfare, but the echoes of her lost home. The Void Dominion had stolen Earth's military history, thinking they had captured humanity's strength. Instead, they had revealed their own greatest weakness, the inability to truly understand what they had stolen. They wanted to learn how humans wage war, she said softly. Let's teach them why we became so good at winning them. The strike force emerged from fold space in Earth's shadow, their crystalline ships running dark against the backdrop of humanity's ravaged homeworld. From the command deck of the Starweaver, the same vessel that had once carried her to safety, strategic advisor Emily Morrison watched the planet's scarred surface through tear-blurred eyes. All ships maintain communication blackout, she ordered, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Remember, we're not just fighting with technology, we're fighting with uncertainty. The Void Dominion doesn't know how to handle incomplete information. The strike force consisted of 5 Centaurian vessels, their crews handpicked for this mission. Each ship carried a mixed complement of human refugees and Centaurian warriors, trained in Emily's hybrid combat style. Look there. Commander Vixtel pointed to their tactical display. They've converted the lunar debris field into a defensive network. Emily studied the screen, noting how the Void Dominion had arranged the fragments of Earth's moon into predictable patrol patterns. They're using old Earth orbital defense strategies, which means they'll have blind spots, a human tactical officer completed her thought. The same ones we learned to exploit centuries ago. Emily nodded. Exactly. They copied our orbital defense plans, but missed a crucial detail. Humans always assumed our own defenses would be discovered and countered. We built in weaknesses on purpose, then designed our strategies around protecting them. The strike force slipped through the debris field using paths that would have been obvious to any human admiral, but were invisible to the Void Dominion's tactical algorithms. They approached Earth's atmosphere in a formation that looked chaotic, but followed patterns Emily had discovered in ancient naval warfare texts. Ground forces ready, General Krelax reported, his crystalline form gleaming with battle light. Your hybrid teams are in position. Emily had insisted on mixing human and Centaurian soldiers in each squad. Where the Void Dominion expected either human-style guerrilla tactics or Centaurian crystal tech assaults, they would face both simultaneously. "Begin descent," she commanded. "Radio silence until ground contact." The drop pods pierced Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Emily's pod shuddered around her as they approached the landing zone, the ruins of what had once been Singapore. The Void Dominion had converted the city into one of their primary command centers, drawn to its strategic location. "Remember," Emily broadcast to her teams as they prepared for landing, "they know every strategy in Earth's military history, so we'll write new ones." The pods crashed through the perpetual storm clouds that now shrouded Earth. As they dropped, Emily saw how the Void Dominion had transformed her world. Organic metallic structures wrapped around the skeletons of human cities like parasitic vines. Their biomechanical ships nested in the husks of skyscrapers. Impact. Emily's pod burst open, and she emerged into the ruins of her homeworld. The crushing gravity she had trained in for years now gave her an advantage. Her enhanced muscles could move faster, strike harder in Earth's lighter gravity. "Teams, move out," she commanded. Crystal flow formations in the tunnels, human strike patterns above ground. The battle that followed became legend in both human and Centaurian military history. Emily's forces moved like water through the enemy's defenses, appearing where least expected. When the Void Dominion adjusted their algorithms to counter human tactics, they faced Centaurian crystal tech. When they prepared for Centaurian attacks, they met human cunning. Emily led from the front, her hybrid fighting style becoming a symbol of the battle itself. Her crystal flow movements, adapted through years of training, let her dance through enemy lines. The lighter gravity meant she could leap impossible distances, her enhanced muscles turning each jump into a devastating attack. "They're falling back," Commander Vixtol reported, his crystal staff pulsing with victory light. "Their combat algorithms can't adapt to our combined tactics." Emily stood atop a fallen enemy walker, watching as more strike teams landed across the planet. The Void Dominion had based their entire defense on stolen human tactics, never imagining that humanity would evolve beyond their own history. "Earth isn't just our past," she told her mixed crew of humans and Centaurians. "It's our testing ground for the future. Every strategy they stole from us, we'll show them how those strategies were meant to evolve." 5 years after Earth's liberation, the Morrison Vixtol Combat Academy rose from the restored plains of New Singapore, its architecture a stunning fusion of human and Centaurian design. Crystal spires intertwined with steel and glass, creating structures that honored both species' aesthetics while embracing something entirely new. Emily stood at the entrance, watching as the first class of cadets arrived. Young humans walked alongside Centaurian youth, their differences in height and form no longer a barrier but a source of strength. Above them, Earth's sky had finally cleared of storm clouds, revealing stars that no longer held terror. "Quite a sight," Commander Vixtol chimed beside her, his crystalline form reflecting the morning sunlight. "The Council of Elders still can't believe how quickly Earth has recovered. They underestimate the human drive to rebuild." Emily smiled, touching the Academy's crystal steel walls, just like they underestimated our ability to adapt. Inside the Academy's Great Hall, images of the Liberation battle played across crystal displays. But unlike traditional military recordings, these showed more than just combat. They revealed moments of cooperation. Human soldiers helping Centaurian warriors navigate urban ruins, Centaurian crystal techs combining their abilities with human engineering to clear rubble and rebuild communities. "First assembly in 5 minutes," a young instructor reported. A human woman wearing a modified version of Centaurian battle armor, her movements flowing with the grace of crystal flow training. Emily nodded and made her way to the podium. The assembly hall filled with cadets, their excited chatter a mix of human voices and Centaurian chimes. She looked out at their faces, some smooth skin, others faceted crystal, and saw the future she had fought to create. "Welcome to the first day of your new life," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. Look around you. What you see isn't just a classroom or an academy. It's proof that evolution isn't just about survival. It's about transformation. She gestured to the battle displays. The Void Dominion thought they could master warfare by stealing our history. They believed that combat could be reduced to algorithms and ancient strategies. But they forgot something crucial. The greatest weapon any species possesses is the ability to change. Commander Vixdal stepped forward, his crystalline surface shifting with patterns of pride. What you'll learn here isn't just human tactics or Centaurian techniques. You'll learn to think beyond the boundaries of your own species. Emily walked among the cadets as she spoke. Humans will learn to channel force through crystal formations. Centaurians will study the improvisation and adaptability that helped humanity survive countless challenges. Together, you'll create fighting styles that have never existed before. She stopped beside a young human girl who reminded her of herself at that age. But most importantly, you'll learn that strength isn't about being the most powerful. It's about finding power in your differences. The Academy's curriculum was unlike anything either species had seen before. Combat classes combined crystal flow with human martial arts. Engineering courses taught students to merge Centaurian crystal tech with human mechanical innovation. Strategy sessions emphasized both species' approaches to problem solving. Some say this is an experiment, Emily concluded, returning to the podium. They're wrong. This academy isn't an experiment. It's an evolution. Every time a human masters crystal manipulation, every time a Centaurian learns to improvise like a human, we prove that the future belongs to those who dare to transform. As she finished speaking, sunlight streamed through the crystal steel dome above, creating a dance of light that symbolized the merger of two worlds. The cadets rose as one, human and Centaurian together, their applause and crystal chimes merging into a sound that represented hope itself. Later, standing in her office overlooking the academy grounds, Emily watched the cadets begin their first training sessions. Commander Vixdal joined her, his scared crystal form a testament to their shared battles. Did you ever imagine, back on the refugee ship, he chimed softly, that your adaptation to our gravity would lead to all this? Emily touched the medal on her chest, a unique design that combined human and Centaurian symbols. I imagined survival, she replied. The universe gave us something better, evolution. Below them, the first generation of a new kind of warrior trained beneath Earth's recovering sky, their movements a dance of crystal and steel, strength and adaptation, tradition and innovation. They were no longer just humans or Centaurians. They were pioneers of a future where difference bred strength, and change was the only constant worth preserving.